What I want to talk to you today about is observation, curiosity, questioning, and imagination. They're fundamental elements in everything that we do. Whether it's going to the railroad depot in Shiroishi and buying tickets to come over here in the morning, to finding our way up here and finding our way to the building, to buying something to eat, to combing our hair, taking a shower, doing whatever we do, the simplest kinds of things. And we use these from the time we're tiny. I remember walking down the street in Edmonds, Washington, near my office when I was going to lunch one day at my favorite Mexican restaurant, and seeing a colleague walking along carrying his 4-month-old son, Greg Jr. It was a beautiful day, and that little boy's eyes were like this, and his mouth was open. And he was looking around, and I could almost see all the information streaming into his head. Because what he was doing was developing all the information that he needs to live as he gets older. It was just streaming in. He was totally open to all the sounds, all the smells, all the sights, all the movement, everything. I've never forgotten it. I was utterly fascinated by that process. You've seen little children, a few years old. You come out, you see this little child down like this. But what's the child probably doing, staring down at the ground like this and not moving? The child has discovered ants. Little tiny ants coming up out of the ground, little bits of sand all around that they dragged up as they've come out from their home, and they're going this way, and they're going this way, they're coming and they're going, and the child is observing and questioning, doing all of these things, taking this information out. What are these little things? These are so interesting. Where do they come from? What does their home look like down there? And not moving, not making a sound. Later on, most of us shrug our shoulders at those things because, well, we know about them. Some people become entomologists and spend their careers studying ants around the world. Fascinating, fascinating study. But we all start wide open to everything in our surroundings. And we learn to narrow that focus down as we get older. Without the use of each of these, Professor Suzuki would not have his Nobel Prize in Chemistry today. He wouldn't have studied chemistry or science. He wouldn't have asked all the questions that he needed to ask. He wouldn't have questioned the data that he saw. He wouldn't have made different connections until he finally made the connections that have benefited in so many areas, in medicine and business and industry, that finally garnered him the Nobel Prize in Chemistry. Everyone's very proud of him. It's that kind of process. Learning to ask questions. You know, a lot of us learn to not ask questions after a while. In fact, some of us are taught not to ask questions. We're taught simply to take the information in, study it, learn it, and not question. I've always been an advocate of questioning. It's important, it's vital to ask questions. As a counselor, I ask questions all the time. People would come in and they would say, Mr. Polley, or usually they'd misidentify me and call me and honor me with a doctorate. They call me Dr. Polley, even after I've explained, no, I'm a master's degree. Well, thank you, doctor, very much. And they'd tell me that they needed help. And I would ask them, what are you here for? Well, I'm not feeling well. Describe what you mean. What do you mean by this? They describe the situation. What do you want to do about it? I want things to change. I notice a difficulty when one or the other person, if I'm seeing a couple, would say, or even if I'm seeing one person and they're talking about the spouse, I want him or her to change. I think, we've got a problem here. Because what I'm hearing is that I want that person or that situation to change, but I'm not seeing my part in it. I'm not seeing my involvement of where I fit in, of what I can do. And so I try to bring them back to looking at what do you think you can do differently? And sometimes people would get angry with me and sometimes leave because they didn't want to do something differently. They wanted me to somehow fix the situation or go in and like I'm the garage and they're going to bring the husband or the wife in and I'm going to tinker with them and they're going to take it home and it's all going to be fixed. Human beings don't work that way, do they? So what I'm doing is using each of these elements, and I'm trying to teach them to engage in them and use them so that their lives will benefit and they can change. They can make the changes needed, the changes necessary. The same thing, here's something that I learned last week that just by accident. Because I tend to be open to, some people think I tend to be open to a lot of distraction. But I'm sitting waiting on the bus for the bus to leave, and I always get there about 10 minutes early in order to get a seat. And the little tiny fly flies in, flies past my eyes, and lands on the window. Problem. I can see through the window, but it's hard. I can't move past it. I can't get out. And the fly walks around, and I use my imagination. I can imagine the fly thinking, I've got a problem here. Why can't I get through this barrier? What is the barrier here? I can look out, but I can't get out. What do I need to do? There's a stainless steel post over here. Flies over there. Pretty soon flies back to the window. In the window, this is the glass part, and up here there's a sign that is not as solid as this. You can't see through it. So the fly decides, I'm going to walk up here and see if this is different. Gets up here, yep, it's different. I can't see through it, so I definitely can't get through it. So the fly comes back down here. Flies back to the post. Flies back here. The fly turns this way, goes up this way, goes up here, stops, comes back down here, back to the post, back here. Same situation. I still can't get through the bloody window. I don't know something. I can't get through this where I need to get through. So after a while, the fly, after going back here, coming back here, flies up here and walks all the way up there. Apparently deciding, I guess I haven't gone far enough. Well, an interesting thing is that way up here, there was a small window open. Fly gets all the way up there and turns and faces the little window. I feel a breeze. Flies up and out. Now, how many times have you, I know I've seen it a lot of times, many times when I'm on a bus and I see a fly or a bee or something come in and they're buzz all over the window. They don't do what this little fly did. And after a while, I know, unless they happen to wander out a door, when a door opens, later in the day that fly or that bee is going to be found dead somewhere. But that little fly really used all of these elements to do what he needed to do to get out of the place. And this has been fundamental to the work I've done with people through the years. And one of the things I've said, and I've done business consulting, I have run a private practice twice, I've developed mental health programs and developed one from a staff of 7 to a staff of 30, including 6 psychiatrists that work for me. So I've used exactly these same principles in all of these things in learning and figuring out what kinds of things do people need, what do we need to do differently in order to operate better, to make our program better. And in everything that I've done, I've used exactly the same process, the same principles. To give you an example, in one of our programs, in the mental health program that I helped develop, my staff were running a group for nursing home residents. And some of them started complaining. The ones who were mentally alert were complaining about the ones with Alzheimer's disease because they didn't want to be associated with these Alzheimer's patients because maybe people would think that they were just like them. So they didn't want to come anymore. So I get a call from one of my staff up there, one of that team, and they tell me about this. And George, what about starting a group just for the Alzheimer's patients in the afternoon? I said, sure, try it, see what happens. It's amazing. We have to expect being surprised, expect surprises. Because I get a call the next week, George, you'll never expect, you never suspect what happened with the group. I thought, well, what happened with the group? What was really successful? The people really liked being there in the morning by themselves because they got to carry on really good conversations. And the people, the Alzheimer's patients really liked being there in the afternoon. I thought, well, okay, so what's new? All the people from the morning program showed up. I said, what? They all showed up. Why? Because they wanted to help these poor people. They saw themselves as volunteers. I thought, wow, what? I never would have thought of that. My staff didn't think of that. The people themselves showed them. Because what my staff did was provided an opportunity for this other group of people to come over and be helpful. And one of the things people in a nursing home want to be more than anything else is helpful. They don't want to be regarded as leftovers that are pushed aside someplace. They want to be helpful some way. It was exciting.